The last four words on the line. Shezeu. Shezeu im b'chokosei telechu. This is what we mean. You shall follow in my ways. Shezeu b'pchinas hasiyua. This is the assistance that a Jew gets from Hashem when he commits himself to chukosai. Uvechukoisai loshen Rabi. We also mentioned earlier, it doesn't say chukah, it says chukoisai, plural. Why? Hen shtei chakikos. It refers to two types of engravement. Shebi bechutz, umi bifnim. From the outside and from the inside. Liyos bebchinas bi'eir hanoveya. We want it to be, Moshe, a engraving that comes from a flowing well. Remember, he quoted the pasuk Be'er chafaru sarim b'mechaykik mishanaysam in Bamidbar. So he says Be'er, Avi, Be'er, Baruch, a Be'er, a well. A well comes from the bottom up and it flows constantly. So we want the neshama to flow into the personality and in the activity. And when that is accomplished, Hashem gives us the rain. What does that mean? Hashem then is mamshich, he draws, he gives you Torah. More specifically, what do you get from Hashem? The inner aspect of Torah. We call that the hidden light of Torah, or Hagonus. Where do you get, what aspect of Torah is the Or HaGonus? Pnimius versus the exoteric part of Torah. So there's Nigla and there's Chasidus. It's Nigla, and Pnimius, Kabbalah, Chasidus. So it's only in the Nigla is the exoteric, and the Pnimius is the esoteric, which is called Or HaGonus, the hidden light. Says the Rebbe here, all this is still not adequate. Next page, top of 287. You must refine your body. Torah here, Torah there. Hey, are you a mensch? Do you have nice midos? Anyone that says Chabad Chasidus doesn't focus on the practical bottom line, let him read this line over here, okay? This is from a Maamar, Rabbi Chaim 1942. To rip out, to tear out bad midos. And to acquire as midos toivos, good midos. Okay, so Chabad doesn't spend 5 pages on, like Musar does, on this concept. It's short and brief, but it's the same idea. I don't mean Chasidus the same idea as Musar. I mean to say that a result of learning Pnimius HaTorah requires refinement of character. That's what he says. Look what he says. In the bottom of 286, he says, all of these things of the Pnimius and the well-flowing and the Chakika Mibapnim, he says, all this is good stuff, but it's not adequate. Because there needs to be the Avodah, going on to 287, of refining your character, your guf. How? By removing the ugly midos and acquiring in their place good midos. Is it clear enough? Absolutely. Uvichlal zeh, and the Rebbe says, part of this includes hayoker the Torah mitzvahs. What does the word yoker mean? Precious, expensive, dear, something that's yoker. There is Torah mitzvahs, Avi, but then there is the yoker of Torah mitzvahs. In other words, it's dear to me, it's precious to me. Like you have an item that's so precious, something that's nostalgic, that's for your parents and grandparents. It's not just you have a nice item, Baruch. It's yoker to you. It's like sentimental. That's the word I'm looking for. Sentimental. So we're talking about here having an appreciation of Torah mitzvahs in a sentimental way. And now he says in Yiddish. Let's look at the Yiddish. By ihm soll sein Teil der Inyan von Torah mitzvahs. By this individual, Torah and mitzvah should be tire. Tire is the Yiddish word for precious and special. What's the next Mishnah and Pirkei Avos after Rabbi Omer? It says what? Be careful in the lenient mitzvahs like in the stringent mitzvahs. You know how that could be? Only if you have an appreciation for the yoiker. If you see every mitzvah as precious, then there's no difference between what seems to be lenient or seems to be stringent. It's all mitzvahs Hashem. And if you don't have the yoiker appreciation, you don't feel it as precious, but rather just you do what you do and all that, then you make a difference between, oh, this is a big one. You know? Like the three big mitzvahs, kashrus, taras hamashpocha, and Shabbos. And everything else we can fumfer, we can play around with. You know, of course, when someone doesn't know about an aleph and a beis, you tell him, hey guy, let's start with the three big C's. You know, kashrus, Shabbos, and taras hamashpocha. But someone who's knowledgeable, someone who's learning, someone who has a family, someone's already from and knows better, what are you talking about? And something that's lenient, that seems to be easy, that we could, go this way, that way? No! Because I look at a mitzvah, what's behind the mitzvah? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is behind it. So every mitzvah, whether its outer form is easy or heavy, its essence is precious. That's what he says. The azu zoye b'mitzvah kala kebabab chamura. Then he'll be careful in the mitzvah that's kala like he is with chamura. The zeh dafka ba'yidei haderech hayeshara. And the Rebbe says this comes only when you choose a path, the right path. Sheyivcher lo ya'adam, that man shall choose ba'avodah v'poel mamish. Right? Rabbi Omer, going back to the beginning of the Maamar on page 279 that we began about 2 weeks ago, and we quoted the Mishnah, Rabbi Omer, what's the right path man should choose? And we asked the question, it's Torah and mitzvahs, what's the answer now? Bottom line, guys, what's the answer? The answer is, we're not just talking about Torah and mitzvahs. We're talking about working with your nefesh habamis, refining your character. And that's when you become beautiful. That's when God likes you and man likes you. And when you're lacking in that area, there's a breakdown. You might make God happy, but you don't make man happy. You might make man happy, you don't make Hashem happy. So Rabbi Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, you want to accomplish shleimut, completion, wholesomeness. You want to be wholesome. You got to do the avodah of working with the guf and refining the nefesh habamis. What's the time?
Almost 2:40.
2:40. So another 5 minutes, I'll just tell you something else. First of all, any questions? Comments? Anyone? Okay, so this idea that we find an emphasis on this Eze Derech Sheyaver Lo Ya'odem. This, he says, is Derech Yishara. It also requires thought. It's not like some people ask, no, so you need Chasidus to teach you this? Let me learn Mesilas Yesharim. Let me learn Pirkei Avos. And I know that Pirkei Avos talks about character improvement, character refinement. Why must I learn Chasidus? And not just ordinary Chasidus, not just Chasidus of the Baal Shem Tov, but Chabad Chasidus. Why? And the answer is that for a person to constantly feel the need to refine themselves and work on themselves, today meaning the last 200-300 years, when things have become so the way they are, you need to excite your mind. You have to be stimulated. I live here in Borough Park and I have all these Hasidim all around me. Or if you live in Yerushalayim and you go down to Meir Shoram or Geula, right? And you have all these Hasidim around you. There's no question that people who are into their Hasidic tradition, and it's a wonderful tradition, and are plugged in. Nevertheless, the mind, the seichel, sometimes is not plugged in. Why? Because they didn't apply. They didn't use their mind for their connection. They used their heart, chuckling, screaming, singing. Emotions is great, no question about it. But when you have, in addition to the emotions, the seichel talks, especially today, to Western thinkers. There's no question that without look even Eish HaTorah and Or Sameach, they used, I don't know how much is today, but they used to use the seichel element to convince people to be frum, or Amnon Yitzchak, right? In other words, what we see is that the world, post-Holocaust for sure, needs seichel to continue, because seichel is a very exciting thing. You understand. So the Alter Rebbe saw this already 250 years ago when he started the Chabad movement as a continuation of the Baal Shem Tov. The Alter Rebbe said the Baal Shem Tov's approach will require, especially in Russia and in Ukraine, where Haskalah was rampant, and in Germany, Haskalah took over, and the youth were all gravitating because it was fascinating. And so the Alter Rebbe said, if we don't provide kosher Haskalah, i.e. the Chabad usage of mind to understand God and see how God is united with the world, we're going to lose them. My wife Zayda, Reb Zalman Serebransky, grew up in Brahin, Ukraine, near Chernobyl, not far from Chernobyl. And he was a bright boy, and he learned, in the local cheders, whatever. And then the communists got in, and many of his friends, most of them, were all communists. And they were frum in their youth, and then they left their frumkeit. And they said to them, and he said that they gave him books to read, and he read them. He was a very bright man. And he said he even understood that there's value to the communist ideology. But one thing that they said to him that he couldn't agree with is, therefore they said, drop God. Drop Hashem. And Reb Zalman said, I don't see the two. But he said, this was a challenge for him when he was a 20-year-old young man in Russia, Ukraine. This was an intellectual challenge that his best friends argued with him, and they said, and he said, okay, I can even accept some of the arguments of the communists, of the ideology, but to me, you don't have to drop Hashem for that. And luckily, he checked into the Lubavitch Yeshiva in Rostov, and then later in Kharkov in 1924 and 25, and he learned Chasidus with Reb Nachum Goldschmidt, who later came to Bnei Brak, and he opened his head, and he was thinking, and originally he didn't go into Yechida, he didn't go to the Rebbe. He said, I'm not ready to go yet. What he was saying is, I'm not yet a Chassid. I have to figure this out. Do I really believe this ideology? Do I understand this ideology? And after a half a year of engaging in intense Hasidic thought, learning Chasidus with Reb Nachum, he understood, and then he said, now I'm ready to go see the Rebbe. So this is why it's not enough Pirkei Avos, and it's not enough Musar, and it's not enough Chasidus of the Baal Shem Tov. We need also Chasidus Chabad to, and not to be a Lubavitcher. People think Chasidus Chabad is only for Lubavitchers. No, it's for every Yid. The style of the Alter Rebbe that he taught vis-a-vis Chabad Chasidus is for every Yid, not just for Lubavitcher Chassidim. That's a mistake that people make. And they think that Tanya is for Lubavitchers. Chabad Chasidus is just for Lubavitchers. I don't want to be a Lubavitcher. I'm not a Lubavitcher, so big deal. Mistake. It's a mistake. The ideology is for Klal Yisrael. The philosophy is for Klal Yisrael. Okay. Tomorrow we're going to have a Farbrengen for Gimel Tammuz. It's a special day, our Rebbe's yahrzeit. So please tell your friends to come. 45 minutes, 45, 50 minutes. We'll fabring together. So l'chaim maybe, and we'll go from there. Have a great day, everyone. Sei gesund.
Same time?
Same time. Same time, same station.
Same channel, okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.